Hi, I welcome you to this course on IAS 16 Property, Plant and Equipment. In this course, we will discuss about the accounting treatment in respect of property, plant and equipment as provided by IFRS. So we will cover all the requirements that is there in the IFRS in respect of recording transaction for property, plant and equipment. So let's go and understand the course outcomes. Let's move on to the course overview. The primary objective of this course is to provide an in-depth guidance in respect of the accounting treatment for property, plant and equipment under IFRS. So we will cover IAS 16 as a part of IFRS that deals with accounting for property, plant and equipment. So the prerequisite I need is your attention. If you have a zeal to learn, zeal to understand the concept, I am very happy. So let's move on and understand how the course is structured. So the entire course I've divided into 6 major chapters that we call it as readings. And each readings is divided into some learning outcomes. So learning outcomes are basically the subsets of a particular chapter. So my point of view of looking at this is if you complete chapter 1, you will have a solid understanding in respect of these 5 areas. Now let's look into each of these areas in very brief to give you an idea what this course is going to cater. We will discuss about the definition of the PP&E under the overview section. What do we mean by PP&E? We will discuss about the definition that is there under IAS 16, and we will understand why understanding definition is very important in standards reading. Then we will move on to understand some of the examples under PP&E under IAS 16. What do we call it as PP&E? We will deal with some of the examples. In third point, we will discuss about standards that deals with PP&E. So I'll tell you one thing. IAS 16 is deals with PP&E. I totally agree with that. But there are transactions. There are transactions which are related to PP&E, but they are not covered under IAS 16. For example, A Limited acquired B Limited, so which means A Limited got all assets, including PP&E, as a part of the acquisition. Now, how to account for these transactions? You acquired a PP&E. It deals with PP&E. Do we need to account for under IAS 16, or is there any specific standard that deals with this transaction? We will discuss in detail. Everything will be covered under this course. Then we will understand the scope of IAS 16. We will understand the ambit within which the guidelines or the requirements of IAS 16 is applicable, because I can't say IAS 16 is applicable for all the property, plant, and equipment. It has some exceptions. We will discuss. Then we will have a brief overview, a bird eye view of the PP&E, how it looks in the financial statement. We understood the theoretical thing. Okay, this is property, plant, and equipment. This is an example. Then we will discuss how exactly it is reported in the financial statements. We will discuss a practical application of IAS 16 in the financial statements. After this, we will move on to the second learning outcome, second reading in respect of initial recognition. We will talk how to recognize or when to recognize property, plant, and equipment in the books of accounts. We will discuss by what amount we need to recognize, what are the costs that are eligible for capitalization, Suppose you have spent $100,000 in respect of, suppose, purchase of property, plant, and equipment, or for construction of property, plant, and equipment. Do you think entire $100,000 is eligible for capitalization? Maybe yes, maybe no, maybe partly may be recognized as an expense and partly may be recognized as a cost. So we will discuss about all those costs that are eligible for capitalization. Then we will discuss about method of acquiring assets. Here we discuss this is one of the methods of acquiring an asset by way of business combination or through an M&A. You may acquire an asset by way of a government grant. Now, how to record these transactions we will discuss in detail. The fourth part of initial recognition chapter is concept of decommissioning cost. It's one of the most relevant area to look into if you are going to move if you want to move yourself as an auditor. If you want to, like, it's a very important area. Sometimes I find students to be very difficult to understand the concept and the accounting, but we will go in very easy and lucid way to mark our ways and to understand the concept of decommissioning cost. And the third scenario or the third reading, we will discuss about the concept of depreciation. What do we mean by depreciation? Why do we charge depreciation in the books of accounts? We will discuss the requirements under IAS 16 in respect of depreciation expense. We will discuss one of the most major area, the concept of component depreciation. This is one of the most important departure from US GAAP. Under IFRS, you need to depreciate an asset based on its component. For example, this is an asset. Suppose it's an asset 1. You don't need to depreciate the asset as it is. You need to break down the assets into component 1, component 2, component 3, and component 4. You need to compute the depreciation of each of the components, the significant components, add them up to arrive at the total depreciation for the asset. It's only for the computation of depreciation. We will discuss in detail about the component depreciation part. Then we will discuss about the useful life and the economic life. What's the difference? Because the depreciation amount depends on the useful life. The standard says we need to depreciate the asset among the useful life of an asset. Now we will understand what do we mean by useful life. Under fourth chapter, we will discuss about the methods under IAS 16 in respect of subsequent measurement. What do we mean by subsequent measurement? Suppose I purchase a property, plant, and equipment today, and I recognize it in the books of accounts. Now what? A year passed, another year passed. What do we need to do with the recording? How do we need to measure the PP&E that we recorded today? Subsequent measurement portion will cover that. So under IAS 16, there are two methods. The first method is the cost method, or we can go by the revaluation method. So we will discuss the accounting treatment for revaluation of PP&E under IAS 16. Now, after that, we will discuss the differences between the fair value method and the revaluation model. Now, why do we need to understand the difference? I come across with a lot of people who thinks fair value method and revaluation method are both the same because we are making the fair value of an asset. That's completely wrong. There are subtle differences between these two models. We will discuss in detail about these concepts. After that, we will discuss about subsequent expenditure in respect of property, plant, and equipment. Suppose you bought an asset on 1st January 2018. After 6 months, you have incurred some of the expenditures in respect of the same property, plant, and equipment that you bought that you purchased on 1st January 2018. Now, how to account for this? Do we need to capitalize capitalize this expenditure, or do we need to expense it? What to do in respect of this expense that we have incurred in respect of an asset that already been recognized in our financial statements. So which means we will discuss about subsequent expenditures. An asset which has already been recognized in the financial statement and we incurred more expenditures upon on that particular asset on a later date. How to account for those expenditures? Do we need to capitalize it or do we need to expense it? Then we will discuss this in chapter number 5. Then we will discuss about the changes in the useful life and the residual value. I was thinking, or the entity was thinking that they would be able to use the asset for 5 years. But after the end of third year, they thought they would be able to use the asset for 4 more years. 4 more years. Then in such a case, the total useful life of that asset becomes 7 years. My initial estimate was 5 years, now it becomes 7 years. Now, it will have an impact on my residual value, the amount of depreciation, and obviously the carrying amount of that asset. Now, how to account for these transactions? We will discuss this concept under the second uh, learning outcome statement of chapter number 5. Then we will discuss about the derecognition of PP&E. When to derecognize from the books of accounts. What are the conditions? If any of the conditions are satisfied, we need to derecognize the property, plant, and equipment from the books of accounts. So we will discuss these points under chapter 5 or the reading 5. Under reading 6, we will tackle the disclosure requirement. So always remember one important concept. Whenever we are reading any standard, it too comes with some disclosure requirements. So this disclosure requirements are the disclosures that an entity is required to provide in respect of, for example, property, plant, and equipment in the notes to the financial statements. Disclosures are provided in the notes to the financial statement. What are the items do we need to include in the notes to the financial statement in respect of property, plant, and equipment? We will discuss these points. Now what? After completing everything, I will throw questions. I will throw questions on you. So after you complete each of the modules or each of the readings, I have designed 5 to 10 questions, solve them so that you would be able to understand how good you are, like how good you understood the concept. At the end of the course, we will discuss about some of the complex questions that comes in the exams, that comes in the professional examinations like ACCA. So we will tackle those questions that may be relevant for any of my student who is watching the video and who is a ACCA student. So we will solve those questions as well. It may come up in DIFR, Financial Reporting Examination. It may come up in your ACCA paper too. So under the financial reporting. So we will also solve those questions, which I call them as review videos. So all those complex questions we will tackle in the review videos. So this is the entire background of this course on property, plant, and equipment. I would love to see you guys on this journey. This journey would be really grateful. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop your message in the comment section. I will try to answer them as soon as I see them. Thanks a lot.